I'm stationed on a remote island, but the haunted secrets I unearthed will chill you to the bone. I never should have opened that door. It was a stupid choice, a dumb curiosity that burned inside me, urging me to see what lay beyond. My heart raced, pounding in my chest like a drum. The rusted metal handle was cold against my skin, and I let out a shaky breath as I turned it, the creak echoing in the stillness. My days on this island were mundane, filled with the rhythm of the waves and the haunting cries of seagulls circling overhead. The air smelled of salt and decay, and the shadows of the tall palm trees danced eerily as dusk settled in. I thought I knew every inch of this place, but I was wrong. That evening had been particularly still. The summer sunset painted the horizon with dying hues of orange and purple. I sat on the porch, sipping lukewarm coffee, when an unsettling chill crept in. A whispered breeze slithered through the cracks, carrying a faint, oddly sweet scent like rotting flowers. My skin prickled with goosebumps. The darkness deepened, and strange noises erupted from the house. A soft thud from somewhere inside made me jump. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I flicked on the flashlight, the beam slicing through the gloom, revealing flashes of cobwebs and dust motes swirling in the air. I was not alone. I stood up, my heart racing faster. The flashlight flickered, casting wild shadows that twisted and turned, as if they had a life of their own. I called out no answer but the echo of my own voice. My feet brought me closer to the door that had always remained shut. A door that held secrets I couldn't begin to fathom. Gripped by a mix of fear and an unmistakable pull of intrigue, I reached out and turned the knob. The door swung open, revealing a narrow hallway that felt darker than the surrounding night. My throat tightened. The temperature dropped. I could see my breath in small puffs. Whispers fluttered through the air, soft, unintelligible voices that sent shivers down my spine. I stepped inside. The floorboards creaked beneath me, protesting my weight. Piles of dust lay thick everywhere, hinting at years of abandonment. Shadows shifted, and I swore I saw something dart just out of sight. It was a fleeting glimpse. I blinked. It was gone. My heart hammered against my ribcage. With each second felt like an hour, I moved deeper into the darkness. A sense of dread built inside me. I reached out, fingers brushing the walls, cold and damp to the touch. Every creak, every rustle heightened my fear. And then, I heard it, a soft, deliberate dragging sound coming from the back of the hall. Panic surged through me like ice water. My breath caught. I could feel the heat of terror pooling in my stomach. A chilling silence fell. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. The dragging stopped. I stood frozen, heart pounding, waiting. Then, out of the shadows, a figure began to materialize. My breath hitched. A scream lodged in my throat as the darkness seemed to swallow me whole. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure emerged slowly, wrapped in shadow, a twisted outline against the darker backdrop of the hallway. My heart lurched in my chest, an animal struggling against captivity. I forced myself to breathe, to focus, as the apparition drew nearer. With each inch it advanced, I felt the oppressive weight of terror pressing down upon me, drowning me in desperation. It was a woman. At first glance, the flickering light from my flashlight barely penetrated the shroud that enveloped her. Dark hair hung in wild, tangled waves around her face, and her dress, torn at the edges, appeared drenched in something dark, an unsettling suggestion of blood. My throat tightened as she raised her head, revealing hollow eyes that seemed to absorb the light, leaving only an empty gaze in their wake. "Help me," she rasped, her voice a hollow echo that reverberated off the walls and chilled my bones. "They won't let me leave. The air thickened as she reached out, fingers elongated and twitching, longing for someone, yet there was a malevolence in her demeanor that kept me rooted in place. I took an instinctive step back, but the floorboard groaned loudly beneath my weight, and she flinched, her hollow gaze sharpening with intensity. A cacophony of whispers burst forth, echoing her words and swirling around me like a tightening noose, filling my ears with a symphony of despair. "Help us?" they chanted, voices overlapping, creating a dissonance that crackled in the chill of the AI. In that moment, all semblance of reason disappeared. My mind raced, a turmoil of thoughts and emotions coursing through me. I had stumbled upon a latent horror, perhaps a curse left unbroken by the island's inhabitants. I stumbled backward, bumping into the wall, desperate to distance myself from the entity in front of me. But the room shifted, the corridor elongated, stretching away into an abyss, as if mocking my attempts to flee. The door I had entered through faded into darkness, an impenetrable void. My heartbeat was the only sound I recognized, drumming a furious tempo of fear. "Join us," the figure beckoned softly now, her expression twisted with a sorrow that transcended fear. "We are many, lost yet here, trapped within these walls, pleading for release." With that, the whispers rose to a crescendo, as if the walls themselves were crying out. I felt a sudden lurch in my stomach, a deep pull that wrapped around my insides like barbed wire. The shadows grew denser, curling around her like smoke, and with each chant, the air turned colder, heavier, alive somehow. Instinctively, I turned to run, but something seized me from behind. Fingers like ice latched onto my shoulder. I screamed, whirling around to face the apparition once more, but she was gone. In her place, shadows writhed, pooling at my feet, coiling around my ankles like eager serpents. Nothing made sense in that heart-stopping moment. Panic surged, and I fought against the inky blackness that threatened to drag me down. I staggered forward, desperate to escape what had turned into an indistinguishable maze of torment, each path leading me deeper into despair. But as I dashed into the next room, the light from my flashlight illuminated a grim tableau. I gasped. What were those marks on the walls? Old, faded photographs filled the room, faces twisted in anguish captured in time. A child clutched a doll with a blank, horror-stricken smile, and in the corner lay a blood-stained dress. Was that the same worn garment I had glimpsed on the entity? My breath caught as I backpedaled into the doorway, realizing the weight of what surrounded me. The whispering was a chorus now, begging to be heard, pushing against my mind. I stumbled away from the fray of photographs as they threatened to spring forth into grotesque life, and suddenly, in the far corner of the room, a door began to creak open on its own. A sickening dread filled my stomach as I felt the twisting shadows shift again, like they were beckoning me closer. The doorway revealed a stairwell leading down into the darkness, a path that seemed to promise both answers and a precipice to something far more terrifying. I stood, frozen, as the whispers soared higher, clawing at the edges of my sanity. The other voices urged me, filled with desperation and menace. I had to choose. The shadows beckoned me deeper. I could either confront whatever lay at the end of this nightmarish descent or remain trapped in this endless anguish. Before my consciousness could settle on a decision, the specter of the woman suddenly reappeared at the bottom of the stairs, one hand extended towards me. Her hollow eyes shone with a faint, ravenous light. "Come down," she whispered, "or join us in eternal suffering." And then, the ground beneath me rumbled, the house shuddering as if alive, a deep, resonant growl that promised sinister reprisal for my indecision. In the heart of the chilling abyss, I plunged into the unknown, unable to tell if it was salvation or doom that awaited me below. Descending the stairs was like slipping into a baptism of shadow. The air thickened as I treaded cautiously on the creaking steps, every echo seeming to mock my resolve. Caution hung in the air, paired with the potent scent of decay. Damp wood, mold, and something far more sinister, a remnant of despair long buried. My heart raced against my rib cage, a frantic creature thrumming beneath the weight of my growing dread. Once at the bottom, I stepped into a cramped, unforgiving space that felt like a tomb. The flickering light illuminated a narrow corridor that stretched out before me, flanked by walls coated with what I dared not identify, peeling layers of paint that revealed brittle hieroglyph symbols etched in a long-forgotten language, their meaning lost and broken. Every instinct screamed for me to turn back, to flee the whispers that resumed their desolate chorus around me. Stay, they tugged, stretching like languid fingers across my skin, promising answers yet exuding a chilling malevolence. They were no longer just echoes. They had become a living entity, pulsating in the air like a heartbeat. I ventured further, each step releasing a cloud of dust that danced in the dim light, settling over pieces of furniture that resembled the shells of long-dead vessels. Around me lay scattered remnants of lives once lived, rusted toys, brittle books, and tattered clothing that faded under distant memories. A vicious wind howled from deeper within, sounding like the anguished cries of those captured within this place. The shadows began to resolve into forms, hunched figures huddled in corners like lost souls, their faces obscured but their eyes glowing in eerie light that seemed to probe my very essence. They reached out, yet the grasp was that of desperation rather than malice. Help us, save us, their voices ebbed and flowed like waves against jagged rocks, mixing with the chilling air to form a maddening symphony. I turned back to the stairs, a momentary reprieve flooding my senses, but before I could make my escape, the space morphed around me. The walls breathed and shifted, collapsing inward like a predator closing its jaws. Panic ignited in my chest. The images of the upturned, anguished faces surrounded me. They were everywhere. Seeking release, seeking vengeance, a cacophony erupted, the sound clashing with my thoughts, drowning out my cries for help. I pressed on, drawn toward the end of the corridor where an ancient door loomed, seemingly untouched by the decay engulfing everything else. It was crafted of dark wood, intricate carvings weaving tales of despair and loss, yet it pulsed with a strange energy, a potency that hummed beneath my fingertips as I placed my hand on the door. The whispers surged in volume, coiling around my ankles and urging the weight of countless souls upon my shoulders. Open it, begged the voices, a fervor rising like the tide. Discover the truth. Be one of us. Summoning a thread of courage, I twisted the handle. The door swung open with an agonizing creak, spilling a harsh light that sliced through the darkness like a knife. I gasped as a wave of familiarity washed over me. The room laid bare like an old wound. It was a forgotten parlor, the remnants not just of a home, but a place steeped in darkness, macabre relics strewn about, each a testament to a horrific past. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. It echoed with an enraged finality, locking me inside with the grotesque memories that echoed back. Faces stared at me from the walls, each one more contorted with rage and woe than the last. Their mouths opened in a silent scream, frozen in a moment of torment. I staggered backward, only to feel a cold, shadowy aura coiling around me, forcing my breath into shallow gasps. Then I saw it, a mirror across the room, hunched and clouded with age, beckoning like a siren in the fog. Against my better judgment, I stepped closer, logic dissolving as a pulse of anticipation thrummed beneath my skin. What awaited there could no longer be a simple reflection. With each inch I drew closer, an overwhelming sense of dread filled my chest, a reflection that might not just reveal the physical but the wretched secrets festering beneath. With trembling hands, I reached forward, drawing a trembling breath and all the warmth draining from my body. As I peered into the depths, the glass no longer returned my image. Instead, I was met with a vision, a seething mass of faces, all twisted in anguish, merging into one grotesque visage, that of the woman in the hallway. "Join us," she shrieked, her voice reverberating through my skull like an unholy serenade. The force of it ripped through the parlor, tearing at my sanity, and snaring me in the tendrils of despair that hung around my throat. Did I end that moment? The effortless beauty of darkness enveloped me, and as my vision blurred under the weight of countless souls yearning for release, I felt myself slipping into darkness, into shadows, into oblivion, and then I froze. Time paused, the very air around me thickened as a chilling realization seeped in. Behind me, the door that had sealed shut was now pried open once again, adorned with the silhouettes of those I had left behind. They stood, bodies merging with shadows, their hollow eyes glowing with a mix of vengeance and longing. "Come back," they howled, as the mirror behind me crackled, splintering into 1,000 jagged pieces, each shard reflecting a truth I dared not confront. And just like that, the floor beneath me gave way. The vault of shadows swallowed me whole, and as I tumbled into the infinitude, a single thought consumed my mind. The truth I sought was far more terrifying than any horror I had known. "Become one with us," whispered the woman's voice, as the abyss closed in around me. Clarity left behind. I plummeted further, deeper straight into an unfathomable nightmare waiting to be unveiled. The descent felt infinite, a spiral into despair that swallowed light and warmth as it cradled me in its icy embrace. I spiraled downward, each breath becoming more labored, more frantic, as if the very essence of fear wrapped around my lungs like a vice. The abyss beckoned me closer to its heart, a cold, pulsating core that promised revelations but threatened to tear me apart. Suddenly, the sensation of falling ceased, and I landed harder than expected on a floor that resembled moist earth, not concrete nor wood but the skin of the island itself. Instantly, every part of my body screamed in protest from the impact, but even that pain paled compared to the primal fear that bloomed relentlessly in my chest. The silence here was oppressive, thick enough to slice through, and as I sat up, every instinct warned me to avoid the darkness that enveloped what might be the underground crypts of this place, where centuries of anguish settled like dust in the corners of ancient tombs. It was a dank, musty smell, a fusion of rotten wood, wet stone, and cloying dampness. The space was illuminated by bioluminescent fungi clinging to the walls, casting ominous glows in mottled colors that flickered like dying stars. Ahead, I sensed movement, a shadow skirting the perimeter of the light. Heart pounding, I choked back my fear as I strained to make out the form. It shifted, and I recoiled at the sight of something no. Someone crouched unnaturally. The figure was hunched, limbs contorted in a grotesque approximation of humanity. It lifted its head, and I was met with a ghastly visage marked by decay, eyes sunken yet luminous, watching me intently with a hunger that thrilled and petrified in equal measure. "Save us," the creature rasped, voice a frayed whisper that resonated off the stone walls. Each word seemed to pull at the fibers of my being, a desperate plea wrapped in an ethereal lilt. Its mouth hung open wider than humanly possible, as if attempting to grasp something long forgotten. I wanted to scream, to back away, but the weight of curiosity held me tethered. "Who are you?" I managed to utter, voice shaky and strained. "Lost souls," it moaned, head drooping back to reveal its neck, stretched and partially rotted, a tapestry of torment inked across decaying flesh. "We are the echoes left behind, bound to this wretched island," yearning for release as I slowly grasped the horror encapsulating me. Shadows began to materialize from the passages beyond, swirling into view, taking form from the very darkness that had welcomed my fall. Each figure merged with the next, a distorted procession of anguished faces I could not recognize. Yet something in their glazed expressions felt unervingly familiar. They exuded a sorrow that clawed fiercely at my heart while their bony fingers reached out as if to pull me into their despair. Recognition crashed into me like a tidal wave, memories surfacing from the murky depths of my mind, memories of laughter on the beach, innocent games among the waves, lost friends, old gatherings now twisted by fate. They were the ones I had forgotten, the ones drawn to this cursed land and its insatiable hunger. "Join us," the chorus resonated, an echo reflecting from the stone beyond as the air thickened with an ethereal fog. The words wrapped around my throat, threatening to choke my thoughts into submission. They moved closer, not in haste but with a slow, surreal grace that carried an unsettling undercurrent of urgency. I stumbled back, glancing behind me toward the path I had fallen from. The fissure now glowed with a brilliance that defied logic, a beckoning light flickering through the gloom, promising escape. But I felt the pull of the shadowy congregation intensifying, a call more powerful than reason. Then, at the forefront, the creature that had first approached lunged toward me, its rotting hand outstretched, revealing gnashing teeth hungry for release. It lunged, and I turned to run, but the ground surged beneath me, shifting as though the island itself writhed with life, erasing my escape like chalk from a board that I tumbled. Against the mossy walls, cries echoing in overlapping harmonies as I felt the shadows flowing over me, smothering my resistance. Their collective consciousness swelled, breathing into me the very terror they suffered. A vision consumed my mind, a swirling mass of souls trapped within the island's bones, twisting in agony for eternity. But just as the darkness threatened to overcome me, I heard a piercing scream slice through the fog, the cry of anguish distorted, as if it belonged to someone I deeply knew. The chilling sound spurred me back to reality, igniting the last embers of fight within my soul. "No!" I screamed, tearing myself back from the edge of their cold embrace. Adrenaline surged, propelling me forward even as the shadows grasped at my ankles, pulling against my will. "Staying means salvation," they hissed, voices falling into a chaotic symphony as I struggled against them. With every ounce of will, I stumbled through the walls of darkness toward the flickering light that promised escape, toward the pull of that unfathomable truth that lay beyond. But as I approached the edge, the figures merged into one, an amalgam of what was left behind. Their faces melted together, a mass of agony and longing. "Turn back. You cannot escape your fate." And just as I breached the threshold, the light flickered violently, then vanished, leaving me plunged into total darkness once more. I stood alone, paralyzed by the knowledge that I was now tethered to this island, part of its haunting legacy, a remnant of its infinite horror. The realization sank through my bones like acid. Then, without warning, I felt an icy breath on the nape of my neck and saw a flash of movement behind me. I turned, and there, hovering just beyond the edge of the shadows, was the woman, the figure from the mirror, her hollow eyes wide open, and her mouth curving into a grotesque smile that promised both doom and invitation. "Welcome home," she whispered, and the darkness surged forth, swallowing me again in a wave of chilling despair. As my vision faded, I could feel a distant chorus rising around me, intensifying, echoing what I had tried so hard to escape. What lay ahead might be far more terrifying than anything I had encountered before. But at that moment, not knowing was the true horror waiting to awaken. As the darkness enveloped me, the sensation of being watched tightened around my chest like a vice. The woman's smile, unervingly serene, froze my breath in my throat. I could almost hear her thoughts, a whispering sutra carried on the stale air, a promise of suffering masked in allure. "Stay with us," she urged, her voice weaving through the silence, a silken thread wrapping tighter and tighter. "You have only just begun to understand what it means to be one of us." My instincts screamed for flight, yet my legs felt rooted to the spot. The shadows trembled with anticipation, inviting me to join their eternal torment, a seduction imbued in darkness, echoing the unity I had felt in my familiar past, yet now corrupted by despair. With tremendous effort, I tore my gaze from hers and staggered back, the dank stone walls pressing in around me like the closing jaws of a trap. Every shadow seemed to take on a life of its own, slithering closer, hungry for warmth I could not offer. The ground beneath me pulsed, and every lingering wail from the past caressed my ears, clawing at the remnants of my sanity. If I turned back now, it would seal my fate. Yet there was a flicker of hope embedded within me, a grasp onto the tiny spark of defiance that had ignited when I heard that scream. I had to find it again. The shadows churned like brewing storm clouds, and I swirled away from the woman, diving deeper into the bowels of the crypt. I stumbled along a narrow pathway, over roots and stones that whispered beneath my feet like companions to the lost. Sorrow echoed in the distance, a cacophony of forgotten souls crying out, seeking release from this suffocating cycle. A sudden roar of wind gusted through the passages, sending chills lancing down my spine. The shadows darkened and thickened, wrapping around me like a shroud as the echoes screamed in tandem. "Run! I need to find a way out. There must be some escape from this hell." But the cursed earth rippled again, and I sprawled onto the ground. A thud reverberated through my bones, a reminder of my unsettling fall into this haunted abyss. I forced myself to stand, to regain balance, and pressed forward as the murmur of probing hands reached for me in desperation. The walls began to pulse like a heartbeat, and with that rhythmic thumping came a dawning realization. I was not alone. The air shifted, and suddenly I sensed my pursuers. They flanked me, a spectral audience captivated by my plight. "Come home," they chorused, their voices melding eerily into a singular heartbeat that synced with the walls. "You belong here." In that moment of weakness, desperate and lost, I flicked my gaze back, catching a glimpse of the dancing figures formed from despair. They were drawn towards me, like moths to a flame, their desires twisted and warped. Tendrils of darkness sprang forth, reaching out to wrap around my ankles, urging me to succumb to their eternal homecoming. "I will not succumb," I gasped, the enormity of their presence swirling through me like ice. Silently, I searched within for my own strength, aching to feel the warmth of my past and the determined spark that had driven me before. Yet it was then that reality cracked wide open, and the shadows roared with laughter, a sound that rattled my very core. With a surge of will, I lunged toward a tunnel ahead, its mouth wreathed in tendrils of light, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat, begging me to emerge into something beyond despair. But as I moved closer, the air severed around me. No longer just an alluring glow, the passage began to close. I reached out, arms desperate but grasped only empty air. The shadows rippled, choking out the light, and I could hear the whispers reformulating behind me, a storm of warnings and taunts, echoing the futility of my escape. "Stay! Don't leave us!" The voices screeched, drowning out my resolve that I pressed on, clawing my way through despair, reaching for the threshold. But the darkness surged back, a rushing tide that pulled me further into its encroaching embrace. Panic pulsed through my veins, but just as I felt its talons grip my soul, I managed to lurch forward. My fingertips brushed the edge of the light. Then, bone-deep cold wrapped around me, and the luminescence faded into the malevolent abyss. Just as the weight of despair pressed down, a shriek exploded behind me. I spun, and there was the woman again, soaring through the darkness like a phantom, her eyes dancing with the fervor of the damned as she screamed, "You can run!" Then the tunnel collapsed, the weight of my worst fears crashing down upon me as I was thrown back into the ink-black void. I was alone once more, the ravenous whispers swirling like a maelstrom around me, and I realized, with horror, I had lost everything: my mind, my past, and the only flicker of hope I had embraced. But in that moment of utter despair, I felt something shift within the fabric of the shadows. A presence, cold and ancient, lurked just beyond my sight, and I knew they were waiting for me to succumb, to finally accept my fate. "Bring her to us," a voice rumbled from the depths. "She cannot escape what she truly is." And just as I braced for the inevitable, a piercing light shot through the shadows, a beacon of blinding brilliance that seared through the darkness, illuminating the wretched forms of the lost. The darkness hissed, recoiling as the figures shrieked and clawed at the air, desperate to retreat. I felt the air thicken, time stretching impossibly as the light surged closer, illuminating a path far darker than I had yet conceived. "What is this?" I cried out, clutching at my chest as the voices sharpened with fury. But the ground beneath shifted again, not with the familiar thrum of pulse, but with a horrible certainty that surged through me like liquid terror. As the light reached its crescendo, shadows swirled, revealing those faces once more, owners of anguished beings caught in endless loops. And in their midst, a face I recognized all too well. "Don't you see?" My sister's voice choked through the din, each word heavy with sorrow. "We're all waiting for you to join us." And the light flickered momentarily, the island's heartbeat echoing in the distance, marking my final choice before the veil twisted again. The choice lay hard upon me, and in a flash of raw terror, I realized I stood on shifting ground, balanced on the precipice between two worlds: what I longed to flee and that which pulled me back. Then, with a blinding pulse of energy, the shadows lunged one final time, claiming me as their own, leaving nothing but a piercing scream that shattered the lingering calm in the depths of the island. The darkness closed in, and I was left alone with the truth. Free will was but an illusion in a place where the haunted secrets clawed passionately for my soul. The darkness enveloped me, a heavy cloak that suffocated any remnants of courage. The scream still echoed in my ears, a haunting melody that reverberated through the void. I stumbled forward, feet moving of their own accord through the thick, cloying shadows that coalesced around me like a living creature hungry for a meal. "Don't stay here," my sister's voice whispered, disembodied yet achingly close. "Please." But I had learned that pleading meant nothing here. Nothing but an invitation for the shadows to tighten their grip. Each step felt like I was wading through thick, viscous tar, and I was dimly aware that the other souls hungered for my company. Hushed whispers formed a chilling symphony, a chorus of despair calling me home. Yet they were murky, indistinct, tainted by an insatiable longing for what idleness could not bring. The chilling air shifted, and I pressed on, skimming the cold stone walls, letting them guide me deeper into this twilight prison. Shadows coiled around me, pulling at the frayed edges of my sanity, waltzing along the precipice of madness. My heart raced with dread as I stumbled into a small alcove, a brief respite amidst the suffocating darkness. What caught my eye, however, was no salvation. In the center stood a gnarled tree, roots twisting downwards like the very souls I wished to flee, tendrils of its limbs scratching toward the stars that had been swallowed by the gloom. Streaks of crimson stuck to the bark, glistening like a creeping essence that pulsed with life. It was a grotesque effigy of despair and dark beauty, and I was drawn to it despite my better judgment. "Help me," a faint voice lilted, the sound sliding between the cracks of my sanity. The tree trembled, and a vision flickered before my eyes, an image of my sister, her mouth agape, screaming silently as the very roots enveloped her, dragging her into the abyss. Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, thrumming with anticipation and eager hunger. "Join us!" they shrieked in unison, and as I turned to retreat, the alcove shifted and contorted under the weight of their desperation. The exit had vanished, a wall of darkness solidifying around me. "Why are you doing this?" I begged, the words plunging into the void, consumed by the resonance of those twisted shapes lurking just outside the periphery of my sight. But the only response was a cacophony of laughter that enveloped me, cruel and derisive. "You've always belonged to us. Look around, this is where we bloom." In frenzied chaos, lightning surged through the air around me. The gnarled tree pulsed with ferocity, roots more alive than ever as they began to rise. They twisted and swayed, grasping toward my trembling form. I was caught, suspended in time as memories stitched and unraveled before me, images of laughing days on sun-kissed shores, of evenings by the fire, joy muffled now by sorrow's creeping intricacy. It was all crafted like a diorama of shadows, where every piece held a sinister weight in this malevolent island. Then, amidst the whirl of despair, I saw her again. My sister's very soul seemed to belong to the roots, splayed across the ground. Her gaze pleading yet fired with anger. "You have the chance to save us." "Save you from what?" I screamed in fury, grasping the fissures of reality I could feel slipping away. "From yourself," she said, her voice grave and chilling. "Stand and fight, or join us. The choice is before you." With that, the heartbeat of the island quickened, the walls closing in around me, the shadows spiraling, fraying my grasp on sanity. I could feel the energy surge within me, flaring to life, a force aching for release as the tree's roots twisted closer. They encircled my ankles, pulling me toward their brutal embrace. The cold dampness seeped through my skin, binding me in place, while the voices roared like tempests, drowning my resolve. "Embrace the darkness," they cheered, a grotesque rapture filling the air. And just as panic froze my blood, an understanding surged. My sister was right. The only way to save her and the others was to confront this insatiable abyss, to reject their invitation to join in despair's cruel embrace. That I roared my defiance. "You can't have me," and in that moment of raw, desperate clarity, I felt something snap within me. The energy surged, illuminating the space around me with blinding light as I wrenched free of the root's grasp. Each step back ignited strength, dispelling the gnawing whispers that clawed at my mind. But the shadows shuddered, angry and restless, swirling with malevolence as my flickering hope gathered force. Their laughter grew tumultuous, a shriek of rage echoing in my ears. In an instant, the gnarled tree shattered, its remnants exploding in a fiery shower of dark energy that threatened to consume everything as the shadows recoiled. I turned to run, the cacophony of despair consuming the space behind me, and for the first time, the flicker of fear was mingled with the taste of potential freedom shoving me forward. But just then, a chill ran down the nape of my neck. The shadows whispered one final call, sharp and piercing. This isn't over. You will find us again, and in the midst of the chaos, a figure emerged, my sister, but not herself. She was transformed, skin pale as chalk, eyes glittering with a malevolence that sent terror through my veins. Welcome home, she smiled, a twisted, radiant grin. The ground beneath me trembled, and chaos erupted as I stumbled back, rooted in the inexplicable horror unfolding before me. Nothing had truly changed. The choice loomed ahead, insatiable and dark. I was caught between two worlds, between the familiarity of loss and the scream of shadows clamoring for embrace. The abyss beckoned once more, and as it reached toward me, the truth shattered, climaxing in a scream that eclipsed the echoes of the damned. The hollow promise of the island wrapped tightly around my throat. And in the heart-stopping moment that followed, I knew I had no choice left but to face the darkness again or be devoured whole. The island pulsed with a malevolent heartbeat, a rhythm that aligned with the growing dread coiling in my stomach. My sister stood before me, transformed into a specter of her former self, her smile grotesque, her demeanor twisted. Where once there had been love, an insatiable hunger now glimmered in her hollowed eyes, a yearning that twisted the very foundations of my fear. Don't you see? She intoned, her voice a corrupted melody dancing on the wind. We are eternal here. Join me and we will never part again. We will become one with the darkness. Her arms stretched wide, inviting me into the fold of despair, and I could feel the shadows ripple in anticipation, waiting to devour yet another soul. No, I screamed, though my voice trembled under the weight of terror. Steps backward collided with a wall of shadows, invisible but pervasive, cloying, tugging at my existence. The memories of innocence clashed brutally with the horror invading my reality, and for an agonizing moment, I stood paralyzed, trapped in the spasm of fear. Then, like a poorly struck match igniting against the night, clarity surged. I won't lose you, I cried out, my voice cracking. I could feel the desperation wrap around me like a cold wind intertwining with grief. Lose me? She echoed, bittersweet mirth lacing her tone. You see, your preservation leads to your demise. This island offers life beyond what you know, and yet you cling to your fading humanity. Her figure shimmered, and for a moment, the shadows faltered, darkened hues pulling away to reveal glimpses of the sister I loved. But just as quickly they closed in again, erasing her from my grasp. A particularly fierce jolt of energy erupted from the ground, a thrum echoing through the island that caged me. Flee if you dare. Your fight has just begun, she shrieked, and suddenly, the shadows shifted. They consumed her shape, blending her into the darkness until all that remained was the vacant, mocking smile that haunted my memory. Just then, the island trembled beneath my feet, a response to the turmoil. I slammed my eyes shut against the sheer, suffocating terror gripping me, desperately searching for a fragment of bravery to cling to. I summoned all my will and steadied my breath, forcing my eyes open once more as the darkness approached. The words I heard next were barely a breath, but they chilled my spine. You're not alone. Others are here, too, waiting. Out of the blackness emerged silhouettes, gaunt figures drifting away from the undergrowth, their faces obscured, but their presence weighed heavy, heavy enough to crush hope itself. I saw their mouths move, soundless promises spilling out as they edged closer, pulling me deeper into this surreal tableau. Join us, they chanted, almost in harmony, the cruel melody wrapping around their sorrow. They bore the same hollow eyes that had once sparkled with joy, now turned to a shadowy facade where despair had taken root. I recognized them from my lost memories, the faint echoes of friends and loved ones who had succumbed to this islandless lure. Panic surged, and like a startled deer, I dashed through the dark, heart pounding with primal terror. I had to escape, but the shadows were relentless, swirling around me, blocking any path to freedom. Each step gravitated toward them. Each breath pulled me deeper into their toxic embrace. "Help us," they wept, voices intertwining into a dissonant hymn. Their faces morphed in the twilight, reflecting my sister's anguished eyes just as they had moments before. Driven by sheer instinct, I stumbled into the dense thickets that had grown over centuries, the trees whispering secrets that clawed at my sanity. The very air thickened with despair, weighing my limbs down as I pressed forward. I could barely see, the branches clawing at me, thrumming with life like electric pulse as the shadows whispered promises of eternal unity. The trees twisted and churned, revealing an opening that seemed almost welcoming. Desperation propelled me forth, a desperate bid for freedom from the encroaching shadows that pressed ever nearer. But as I stumbled into the hollow of a massive tree, I sensed something even more sinister waiting. The roots shifted beneath me, quivering with dark intent, and suddenly, I was conscious. Conscious of something behind me, not the forest, not the shadows, but something infinitely more ancient, more powerful. It was there, veiled in darkness, observing with an eternity's patience, lurking just beyond the threshold of perception. I felt its gaze upon me, cold and undead, a predation that cut through the roiling fear. "Turn around," a voice whispered, deep and gravelly, vibrating through the very marrow of my being. My heart raced as a choice loomed, whether to confront whatever waited behind me or to press forward into the grip of shadows promising both salvation and doom. With all my resolve, I spun around, but the darkness swallowed the light, and all I could see were those glistening eyes, piercing the void, full of an ancient hunger. The last remnant of hope shattered like glass, and in that chilling moment, I felt the ground beneath me give way and I screamed. The abyss yawning wide as I tumbled into the inky darkness, not knowing where it led, nor the horrors that awaited. All hope faltered as I spiraled into the unknown, the last echoes whispering welcome home. As I plummeted through the disorienting descent, the world above twisted until it vanished entirely, swallowed by the yawning nightmare. A cacophony of whispers crowded my mind, each voice rasping my name, daring me to surrender to the abyss. My senses blurred, and a haunting melody filled the air, resonating from the depths like a forgotten lullaby. When I finally landed, with a heavy thud, the impact jarred the breath from my lungs, forcing a groan to escape my lips. I lay prone on a damp, slick surface, the echoes of my fall still ringing in my ears. Slowly, dread seeped into my thoughts as I peeled my eyes open to the dim light that flickered like dying embers. All around me, the ground writhed and pulsed, a living tapestry of roots and vines stretching up into an endless void. It was as if the earth itself mourned, soaking in the despair that permeated this forsaken place. An acrid tang filled the air, mixing with the scent of damp earth and something metallic like rust or blood. I pushed myself onto my elbows, peering into the suffocating darkness. It loomed like a living thing, pressing against my very being, bleeding out a wordless invitation. "Stay." A low rumble vibrated through the ground, startling me back to my senses. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing. In the shadows, something shifted. A figure emerged, indistinct yet looming, shaped by the very fabric of despair that draped over this cursed place. The air crackled with energy, thick with malevolence that seemed to squeeze my chest tighter. "Welcome," the creature rasped, its voice punctuated by a slithering hiss. The sound slithered along my spine, crawling into my mind, unfurling layers of terror deep within. Its eyes glowed like lanterns in the dark, reflected shards of desolate memories. "I am the keeper of secrets. Why are you here?" I stammered, tightening my fists in a misguided attempt to muster strength. "What do you want from me?" The creature chuckled, a sound more chilling than laughter, a mocking brook flowing with anguish. "Oh, sweet child, I crave what you fear the most, the longing of the lost and those adorned with shadows. You seek your sister. Your love is like nectar to me." Each word dripped with malice, making my blood run cold. All that I held dear, every memory that ascribed my heartbeat, fell under its dark gaze. I stepped back, searching beneath the floor of twisting roots for an avenue of escape, but the shadowy tendrils encircled my feet, sticky and unyielding. "You cannot run from this eternity," it crooned eerily, tilting its head as if studying a newly captured insect. "You will join her, embrace the truth that lies beyond. Accept the darkness, and you shall understand the world as it truly is." "Not if I can help it," I shouted, desperation clawing at me as I fought against the suffocating roots. With a surge of adrenaline, I lunged forward, breaking the shackles of the tendrils, propelled by instinct. I was met with a wall of blood-stained earth, damp and impossibly hard, but there had to be a way out. In its furious rage, the keeper expanded, a shadow consuming the ground, pulsating like a heartbeat reborn through collective agony. It unleashed a deafening roar, filled with the lamentation of lost souls as specters began to swirl, emerging from the depths faces of my sister, friends, anguished wails resounding like a maddening chorus. They surged toward me, arms outstretched, beseeching me to join their mournful cry. The combination of familiar faces morphed into grotesque visages, melting into each other, gathering intensity. Behind them, more figures emerged, shadowy remnants, an unending panoply of those who had wandered this cursed island before me. "No!" I shrieked, memories crashing down around me like waves of despair. But as I sank deeper into horror, I felt something catching at my ankle roots, forming into hands, grasping, pulling me down into the underbelly of this malignant dream. "Join us!" they wailed, their voices entwining with the other phantoms, converging into a singular lament echoing through the hollow space. I stumbled, nearly losing my footing as music wrapped around their wails, a dissonant tune of sorrow and darkness, seducing me to cease my fight in the midst of chaos. I glimpsed the heart of the monstrosity, the keeper, monstrous and magnificent, weaving its form from the very essence of dread. It pulled at me, drawing me into a reality where time splintered and sanity danced on an edge. The more I struggled, the more hopeless the fight became. The specters swirled tighter, heartbeats synchronizing with frantic inertia, and for one terrifying moment, I was caught between what was real and the heaviness of my own fear. And then, behind the chorus of regret, I discerned a voice familiar yet distant, one I had clung to for so long. "Help me to remember," it beckoned, dragging me toward the depths of darkness. The glimmer of my sister flashed, a last plea beckoning before losing herself among the tease-kenning shadows. With a final, desperate surge, I pushed against the tide, choking against despair as the weight of my memories anchored me, intertwining clarity with chaos. But as I grasped for the summit of light, the shadows erupted with pain. "Will you save her, or lose yourself to the void?" The keeper's voice echoed, trembling through the darkness, taunting me with the cruel choice I had forged. And then, in a fleeting flicker of hope, I saw it an opening, stark against the abyss, a realm where the whispers faded, shining with the promise of life. But before I could lunge toward it, the keeper upgraded its assault, a roar consuming the wholeness of my desperation, wrapping tendrils around my heart as I realized my greatest fear: what if I stepped into the light only to lose my sister forever? And as I hesitated, the darkness tightened, and the earth roared with indignation, a deafening sound that shattered the illusion of escape. The figures spiraled nearer, their hands grasping, and in that moment, the very island seemed to exhale, and the world fractured around me. What lay beyond that shivering threshold? Salvation or doom? I couldn't tell, as despair threatened to suffocate me whole. The keeper loomed, eyes aglow with ravenous delight, waiting for my decision as the shadows recoiled. The anchor of my own urge spiraled, and I felt the tendrils release their hold, just as wild laughter echoed in the deep. I was being dragged back into darkness. The keeper's last laugh boomed, promising that the secrets of the island would soon unravel my fate. But amid the chaos, realization dawned: perhaps this was all part of the keeper's game, a chance to unearth the truth hidden beneath despair. While everything inside me screamed to flee, I gathered my courage for one last stand, my answer lingering just beneath the surface. And then, with an echoed, pulsing heartbeat, the shadows closed, entrapping me in a predatory embrace and driving me deeper into the heart of darkness, as everything blurred into night. The inky tendrils of darkness coiled around my arms, binding me in their relentless grip as the keeperess' laughter echoed menacingly in the vastness. I could feel the pulse of the earth beneath my feet, thrumming with a life of its own, a malignant heartbeat that resonated with the cries of the restless spirits around me. Time felt fractured as I struggled against the weight of despair pressing down on my chest, a heavy shroud woven with my memories of love, loss, and unearthly terror. Each whispering phantom that dared to swirl near me was wrapped in illusions of familiarity, their faces flickering through the chaos like ghostly projections, both tantalizing and horrifying. My sister's face emerged, hauntingly luminous amidst the darkness, a beacon that both soothed and disturbed my heart. "Remember me," she urged softly, her voice laced with yearning. "Remember who we were before all of this, before the shadows came. Fight them." Another voice cracked through the din, an unfamiliar echo drowning the sweetness of her plea. "You must not give in." As I flinched at the discordant blends of past and present, the keeper reared back, its elongated form swelling with rage. "Nonsense," it howled, every syllable dripping with venom. "There is no escape from the truth. Your sister has become part of the very shadows that you fear." I gritted my teeth against the overwhelming desire to succumb to the sorrow wrapping around my spirit. What did that mean, to lose her to the shadow? Bitter memories clung to my mind, and visions of the island's secrets, even in the pitch black, began to surface like dark driftwood in a stormy sea. The keeper had ensnared many. Was she now among them? Suddenly, the earth beneath my feet surged, a tremor rippling through it, causing the grounds to crack and split. A pitch-black fissure opened, and from its depths, a banshee-like wailing erupted, reverberating in my very bones. The tendrils tightened around my legs, but I fought against them, feeling a surge of instinctual desperation. The rift yawned wider, dark and beckoning, revealing visions of the lost pasts entwined with horrors that had come before me. "Look," the voice cried out insistently. "Find her in the echoes of your past. Only then will you transcend this curse." Focusing as best I could amidst the turmoil, I locked onto the memories flickering just out of reach, desperate to hold on to my sister's laughter that had once filled every summer day with light. But the shadows whispered anew, crawling closer, reaching for me like the grasping hands of the damned. They wanted my pain, my anguish, and in their unholy coalition, they cried out for sacrifice, a requiem to their own loss. "Join us," they chanted, their voices a melancholic symphony spiraling into madness. "You'll feel the truth, the release. Let her go." Just as my resolve began to tremble, I witnessed shadowplay, a violent storm of chilling laughter and mournful wails. Again, my sister's visage flickered, this time softened, yet shadowed, as if she fought against the very essence of the abyss. "Save me," she lured. "You have to see me, don't believe what they say." A tremor of recognition twisted deep within me. The conflict between sorrow and hope rose like a savage tide. Was I truly capable of reaching her? Could I pierce the veil of despair that the keeper had spinning around us? Gritting my teeth, I lunged mentally through the chaos, embracing the memories of us, the girl who loved to climb trees, who believed in fairy tales, the sister who promised we would always be together, no matter what. I would not falter in the face of shadows. "Stop," I pleaded, staring back defiantly at the keeper, regaining my footing. "You will not take her." The words seemed small against the roar of the keeper's anger, but they carried the spirit of everything that was worth keeping alive. But as the fissure beneath me yawned wider, a horrific realization dawned. What if they were right? What if saving her meant accepting the darkness myself? The shadows coiled tighter, my very spirit trembling against their icy grasp. That I in that moment of spine-chilling doubt, the keeper's weight bore down on me, pulling, constricting, dragging me toward the chasm. "You'll sacrifice all for one, or you will lose them both," it howled, the walls of darkness shifting and closing in ever watchful, ever hungry, breath escaping my lungs. I fought against the looming terror, and in that unsteady moment, I glimpsed a flicker in the shadows, a figure emerging, silhouetted against the void. The eyes glowed softly, familiar yet sinuous, my sister so close, surrounded by the fading echoes of those who had been lost to despair. "Remember," she cried, an echo drowning in the cacophony of fear. "You can't give up, you must face it. Find the answer in the light, find me before it's too late." And before I could respond, the shadows surged, congealing into a single entity, monstrous and divine, the heart of despair closing in. The keeper clenched its fists, eyes ablaze with hunger. "You cannot escape your fate." As I felt the ground tremble, threatening to collapse around me, I cast one final desperate glance toward the fissure. The last vestiges of light clawing for me, fracturing the darkness that attempted to ensnare. What choice would I make? But before I could decide, the keeper lunged forth, a tendril fastened around my wrist, dragging me toward the abyss, maw, determination ripping through my veins. I felt a searing pain radiate from my heart, and time seemed to stretch impossibly thin. And then everything vanished, my world consumed by shadows, as the keeper's voice roared triumphantly, the darkness swallowing my essence in its unyielding wash. I was stranded, caught in an agonizing spiral, slipping and spinning into a realm where light could no longer reach, and beneath the weight of secrets, I realized this was not the end, that it was merely the beginning of my deepest nightmare. As the darkness engulfed me, it felt as if my very essence was being unraveled, thread by thread. I spiraled through an empty void, hollow and cold, as the memories of laughter and warmth slipped through my grasp like grains of sand in a timer. I could hear whispers, distant and everywhere, curling around me like smoke, weaving tales of despair that clung to my mind with a tenacity that both terrified and bewildered. Then, with a sickening lurch, I found myself thrown against a damp, jagged wall, surrounded by a more tangible darkness than I had ever imagined. I pushed myself up, instinctively wiping dust and filth from my hands, and looked around. I was in a chamber that felt impossibly ancient, a crypt of sorts, lined with stone walls that seemed to hum with an unseen power. The ceiling above arched high, draped in shadows that thickened the air. Groaning whispers filled the air, slithering around my body, static with the manifestations of countless souls lost and broken. Each faint echo bore an eerily familiar weight, resonating with the history I was unwilling to leave behind. "Join us," their voices whispered seductively, layers of lingering sorrow threading through their inescapable allure. I staggered backward, my heart pounding, the walls pressing closer, constricting against the rising tide of panic. "Stop! Just leave me alone," I shouted, my voice echoing back at me, mocking my helplessness. And then I saw the flickering light, a distant illumination glowing softly, emanating from an ornate door at the far end of the chamber. Hope ignited a flicker of courage within me, and I sprinted towards it, each step fueled by desperation. But the shadows writhed in fury, shifting and lunging toward me, a rush of dark energy that clawed at the edges of my vision. "No!" I screamed, my heart racing as I reached for the handle of the door. The moment my fingers brushed against the cold metal, an icy grip seized my wrist. I whirled around, and there stood the keeper, its form oozing darkness, eyes like burning coals of fire with malice. "You think you can escape?" it hissed, its voice a chilling caress that slithered beneath my skin. "You are bound to this place and to the secrets it holds. Your sister's fate is intertwined with the darkness. She will not let you go." With every ounce of fear and defiance pounding in my chest, I tore from its grip, pushing the door open and leaping through, propelled by instinct. The moment I crossed the threshold, the energy shifted, tearing at the fabric of reality itself as the keeper's anguished roar echoed painfully in my ears. That I emerged into a world that felt both achingly familiar and profoundly wrong. The landscape blurred around me, a warped version of the island, overcast skies casting a gray pallor over everything. Gnarled trees twisted in unnatural shapes, shadows flitting between them like haunted memories. I could feel it, the island had absorbed not just the spirits of the lost, but my very fears, giving shape to the nightmares that besieged me. "No, this isn't real," I shouted, forcing myself to take a step forward, but the ground felt slippery, disorienting. The rhythm of my heartbeat hammered in my ears. I let it take me, but even as I struggled to move, I could hear the whispers, the sound of my sister's voice weaving through the chaos, Help me to remember. Images flashed across my mind, perfect days filled with laughter and sunlight, memories now twisted into the suffocating shadows that encroached upon my resolve. The island crumbled around me, and in that moment of heart-stopping clarity, I knew the keeper had been right. My fight wasn't just to save myself. It was to save her from becoming a part of the insatiable abyss. "Jennifer!" I cried out desperately, a raw scream that resonated across the cursed land. "I'm coming. I won't abandon you." In response, the shadows recoiled, and from their depths emerged an ethereal figure, a hazy silhouette that shimmered and contorted, morphing into the image of my sister. "You must remember," she pleaded, reaching toward me, but her form flickered, like a dying flame about to be extinguished. "Please," I implored, the darkness around us swirling with chaotic energy. "Don't give in to it. I will find you. Just hold on." But as I surged forward, the shadows lunged, grasping around my legs, cold and clammy as despair filled the air. A grin stretched across the keeper's face, grand and wicked, as it stepped from the shadows, looming over the turmoil. "Your sister has already embraced the darkness. Join her or you will lose your own path forever." "No, I won't believe that," I roared defiantly, yet I could feel the tendrils wrapping tighter, threatening to erase the connection I held to life and light. In that paralyzing moment when it all felt hopeless, a memory surged forward in my mind, a time on the beach, the warm sun cutting through the whispers of the waves, her laughter ringing through the air. It was in that light, amidst the chaos that followed, where I found the courage to act. "Fight!" I screamed at the keeper, the island's sorrow threatening to pull me into its depths. I drove forward, fueled not just by fear but by the love that tethered me to my sister. As I lunged at the keeper, a flurry of light burst from my chest, a wildfire igniting against the darkness. It cut through like a blade as voices of the lost howled, retreating into obscurity, forced back by a flicker of hope that they could not snuff out. "No!" the keeper shrieked, the shadows recoiling, twisted features revealing raw panic. "You cannot escape your fate. You belong here with us." But I wouldn't let it take me. I pressed on, embracing the painful beauty of my memories, wrapping them around me like armor. The island trembled underfoot, and in that moment of clarity, the door to the truth creaked open once more. The radiance from past moments, memories of joy lost to darkness flooded back, illuminating the horror-stricken faces of all those who had fallen victim to despair. "Remember who you are," they cried, a collective echo that reverberated through my spirit. With each step, I could feel myself reclaiming the pieces that had been torn asunder, forging a path free from the shadows that held us captive. My sister's voice rang through the air, distant but stronger than ever. "Come back to me. You're almost there." And then, like the sun bursting through the clouds, clarity struck. I centered my focus on her, holding onto the flicker of hope amidst a barrage of terror. I shielded myself against the chaotic symphony of wails and whispers calling me into the void, finally realizing that I had the power to break the cycle. "I will not give in," I shouted defiantly, the light bursting forth from my heart, flooding into the darkness, illuminating every corner of the island shrouded in fear. The shadows howled, a cacophony of pain rising, ricocheting against the soft warmth coursing through the air. The keeper's form morphed, shriveling back in fear, its tendrils fraying, the world around us trembling, the fabric of despair ripping apart. But then I saw it, the taunting glint of shadows hardening, the keeper drawing strength from the other's fear, rallying its forces to consume me whole. "Claim what's yours. You're far too late," it hissed as the darkness surged forth. But my spirit blazed brighter, the warmth of connection and love urging me forward, reaching, straining toward those I held dear who were slipping further away, hopelessly tangled in shadows. "I fight for them. I fight for you," I cried, lunging toward the twisting darkness that shivered away from my light. A piercing call against a night flooded with despair. I end that moment of raw power. I broke free of chains that bound me to fear and doubt. The shadows recoiled in fury, screeching like banshees, as the light intensified, illuminating the forgotten echoes of the lost. The fissures began to rip, and the ground trembled beneath me, the island fracturing in a cataclysm of past and present. But just as the shadows dwindled, I was propelled back, caught in the riptide of chaos once more. The last glimmering image of my sister's face, straining against the oncoming tide, glimmered before me as the darkness roared with vengeance. "You will all become one," it howled, lashing out with its tendrils. Even as the final echoes of darkness closed in, I embraced the fearlessness of my heart, the burning desire to never succumb. My voice rose above it all, piercing through the veil of shadows that encased me like a tomb. "I choose love." I was caught in the frantic rush of truth crashing through, shaping my reality, drawing out light until it blazed with the brilliance of 1,000 suns. As the darkness shattered, the very essence of the abyss struggled against the oncoming light. And in those final moments, as they pressed against me, I felt the warmth of my sister's presence enveloping me, her spirit intertwining with mine like threads of light against midnight. Finally, with a roar that shattered the very essence of despair, we broke free, shards of darkness splintering into oblivion, whispers fading, relinquishing what was never theirs to possess. I opened my eyes, and there she stood, vibrant and luminous, arms outstretched. But as I ran toward her, laughter rippled through the air, and the very fabric of the world twisted once more. I blinked, and the shadows converged behind her yet again, a swirling tempest of sorrow crashing into light. "No, wait," I gasped, stepping backward, confusion wrapping around me like a shroud. It was too late. The shadows thickened, creating a barrier between us, wrapping around the keeper a pulsating mass of grief and anger. I felt my heart slow as despair sank in once more. "Girl, you have lost her forever." Its voice echoed through the moaning winds, an unsettling hymn drifting through the darkness. My throat tightened, the truth unfurling before me, a macabre invitation, beckoning me back into darkness. I turned, my thoughts coiled in dread, yet your spirit would not allow me to break free. My sister's face flickered in persistent brilliance, urging me to tread forward once again. But nothing prepared me for the truth slamming against my heart. As I turned my back to that smiling light, everything grew silent. It echoed back at me like the dreadful awareness of eternity, the keeper still at large, even as the darkness birthed a chilling laughter, murmuring, "You have chosen a path too bleak. You too are part of this island now." And as the shadows settled in, I knew the horror had just begun. For even as I lost my footing, my sister stood unchanged, a specter inviting me into the eternal darkness I had tried so desperately to escape. In that shattering silence, I understood the horrifying irony. Light and dark were intertwined, tethered forever by the choices we made. Even in the deepest shadows, terror remained, individual threads of despair that wove a tale too sinister to forget. And then, from the absolute void where once hope flickered, I heard a whisper reverberate through my very soul, a warning from the echoes of the island, a haunting promise that would forever be tethered to me. She's waiting. We're all waiting. In those final heart-stopping moments, I realized with chilling clarity, I had opened the door to the island's heart, and I would have to bear its pulse for eternity. In that deadly stillness, where sanity waned, my spirit curled inward, and the last line reverberated through the darkness. "You are a part of this island now, forever bound by your choices, forever haunted by your fear."